Уважаемые товарищи, хочу сказать, что специальная военная операция идет в строгом соответствии с графиком, по плану. Все поставленные задачи успешно решаются.
Hardly any evidence to support that. And the final point I'd make is if you look at what the Russians are doing militarily in Ukraine at the moment, it does not look like they're bent on conquering the country and occupying it and integrating it into a greater Russia.
In Putin's own mind, it sort of makes sense. I mean, what he is out to do is to try to resurrect some form of Russian empire. Never mind communism, never mind the Soviet Union. I think looking at this otherwise somewhat deranged speech that he gave at the start of this conflict, you can actually understand quite a bit of what Putin thinks that he is after. And to him, it is about not recognizing Ukrainian statehood, but more importantly, not recognizing Ukrainian nationhood, right? And trying to force Ukrainians into this new Russian superstate that he wants to set up. So this is a war of conquest, of a kind that we rarely see, certainly.
Arne may have another idea, but as far as I can read it, the initial operational plan assumed that the government would quickly collapse and its members could be captured and killed, along with the entire Ukrainian intellectual and civic and political elite. The idea was that, Ukraine's not really a nation. There's just a thin upper crust of educated people who have been somehow artificially westernized. So as soon as the tanks roll in, they'll try to run, we'll capture them, we'll kill them, and then the Ukrainians are kind of inchoate mass. They're kind of undefined group. They're a pre-colonial tribe. They'll just listen to the stronger, right? That, I think, is the governing assumption. That's a very familiar governing assumption. To any of those of you who have studied imperial history or colonial history, you'll recognize that assumption, that the colonial power says the other state is not really a state. The colonial power says the other nation is not really a nation, right? And it's interesting to see people in the post-colonial world, like the Kenyan ambassador, for instance, to the UN, immediately recognize those patterns. But that is the fundamental assumption, and it runs, and as a historian,
when I commented about mistakes then, I was thinking, you said his troops were badly positioned, his military machine was badly positioned, and so that might mean he was setting it up for other reasons, but defaulted to this.
Right, why did that happen?
What is the situation he's in now? Because he's not finding allies at that rapid a rate, let's say.
No, he's not finding really allies at all. Look, the first thing I want to say is I think it's quite possible that he decided to launch this invasion because the intent of the mobilization, I think it is possible, the intent of the mobilization was to intimidate both the Ukrainians and the West into surrendering without having to invade. And that he therefore, allowed his military guys to set up a deployment that didn't make sense for an invasion, but was great for threatening. And you can, by the way, see, I have a little bit artifact that suggests that this was true because Putin held one of his weirdly publicly staged, National Security Council meetings on Monday. And one of the things that happened was he absolutely humiliated the guy who is the head of his foreign intelligence agency that would have been responsible for a lot of these operations. He humiliated the guy in public in a way that we've never seen him do before. And I think he probably was genuinely angry that the guy had allowed the Biden administration to get inside all of these operations. And I'm hypothesizing that Putin decided, in the face of having all of this cover blown, decided that he was just going to go for it instead of waiting for this guy Narishkin or somebody else to get something. Putin just said, okay, screw it. We've got the forces. I'm tired of this. We're just going to do this. And I don't care that we don't have the informational cover. So frustration and anger in response possibly to the success of the Biden administration sort of defeating all the informational stuff.
Because I believe their expectation was that Ukraine was going to fold within 24 hours.
And then the Russians will step in. Should Russia attack militarily, Ukraine's over in 2 days. There's just no comparison.
And that we think that not just because of how they set up, quote unquote, the first stage of the operation, but also because of some things that were accidentally published in the Russian press, which basically they accidentally published some of their victory declarations, which if you haven't seen them are absolutely chilling, because they basically speak of what Raphael Lemkin called a genocide, in which the nation has been decapitated and everyone else just has no choice but to go along, and Ukraine has essentially ceased to exist. They're not in terms of provocation and ideology and disinformation. I think it's only going to get stronger, as I think maybe Nelly was suggesting, as they try to, because they went in doing one thing that didn't work, and now they're still, I think, trying to figure out how they're going to talk about what they're doing, and whether it's hard for them to talk about it because they're not really sure themselves. It's Putin doubling down, and they have to win.